Today was yet another day of working on a 40-foot school bus to travel the 48 continental US states with my friends. And it's something that, when you go through and you do the same thing over and over, day in and day out, it can make the process feel really slow, even though by all accounts we're actually ahead of schedule. Like, to be able to do a build like this, I've had the bus now for like around 100 days, but I only started working on it actually in any significant way about 2 months in, something like that. And it was making me think, objectively speaking, what a ridiculous thing to do. And so I figured I'd sit and record this to explain to you how everything good in my life started with an irrational decision. And that probably, if it was a major breakthrough or something significant in your life, or in this case in mine, it looked pretty irresponsible at first. If I were to go back, and I've touched on this in previous videos, but during the time where I stopped working in China because my partners had taken the company from me and left me with the debts, I had two options there. My family, lawyers, and doctors were like, let's take this thing to international court. We're going to go to town. Alternatively, the irrational decision from the outside looking in would have been like what I ended up doing, which was packing up what I had left and moving to Peru, where I would then live for the next 9 months. And it was a grueling 9 months. It wasn't like it's kind of a rough country to go and live in. It was even more irrational for me to go get there and later scrape together funds from like doing odds and end video production jobs with my camera to get a Kombi. I got a VW Kombi. It was like a 78 or something like that. And the license plate on the back said ABY and some numbers, so we called her Abby. And me and three friends lived in that Kombi on the coast of Peru for a number of months. It was completely irrational. And yet, not only were those moments pivotal, me losing the company in China so that I could be guided to a better place, and deciding not to fight, but to like take the lesson and move on. I don't know if there was really a right or wrong decision, but this is what I opted for. And then to move to Peru and then to spend money on a Kombi, money that I had just gotten from being at zero, that also was irrational. And yet I was learning how to drive stick in a car I had just bought on the roads of Peru, where they are not patient. I don't know if you live in a first world country, but if you do, you probably have traffic laws and stuff, and they're mostly suggestions outside of a lot of the Western world. So it was a lot. It was intense, and that continued to persist in life. Later on, when I won the school games and I decided to blow the rest of my earnings, like the profit from it, because you have to win a competition like that of making money, you have to push so hard and spend so much on traffic and marketing and outreach that you don't have a whole ton left over most of the time. This is a common thing that we've run into of the people that have won the school games, and I was in the same boat when I myself competed. But then to spend the rest of it on getting a school games mansion that I just like hobbled together, didn't really ask anyone's permission for it, just kind of did it. And then it would lead to my position at Skool, right? But it was irrational. Like, I even remember the moment where I had mentioned, like, I'd flown back to LA to attend the event. I'd also won this other thing with Skool, so I was going to go hang out at HQ for the first time, and actually with my friend Ted Carr. And so I'd flown back to LA where I grew up, and I took off of like when I was 18 because I didn't really love Los Angeles. It's different when you grow up in the city. So I got out as soon as I could. So it was like a cruel twist of fate that I'd end up going to like collaborate with a company that was based in like El Segundo, which is a handful of miles away from my home where I grew up. And so as I was coming back over, my dad's asking me all these questions, and one of them was, what is the point? What the hell are you doing? You finally made this thing that you've been working on lately. It's making money, and you're gonna go blow it on this other thing. Even my girlfriend at the time, I mean, she wasn't really in support of any of it, but she was angry, like fucking furious that I had made this money and then I was spending it all on this thing. Like, there was no one that was really like, hey, that's a reasonable, logical thing to do. Couldn't tell you why, outside of the fact that it was just fun and I wanted to. It was irrational by all accounts. And yet it got me my job at Skool, where I then proceeded to host the Skool Games winners for the next year. And it's led to all of this. Like, it's worth repeating because that really cemented my place as like a community guy, to go in there and, you know, I might not sit down and be the best person in the world to tell you exactly how to close a sale, but I can tell you how to keep people in your community and how to make them excited. And I was sort of discovering that myself, right? Engagement, retention, those were my strong suits. Like, that was such a wonderful thing to see from that. And then later on, when I stopped working at Skool, what do, right? Do you just go back to being a regular user of the platform if you stop working there? No. So I literally remember thinking, what's the craziest fucking thing I can do from here? Where do I go after, you know, working next to Sam Ovens for a year on Skool stuff? Because at the time, most of the people that were working at Skool were foreign and not there in the office. So it was a lot of time just spent me and Sam, and I'm learning how to do software, making suggestions and shit for what would later become what you now see on Skool. And doing little designs like the Skool Games trophy. This was my project. I designed that, and it was such a crazy thing to then go from that. What do you do next? It has to be up and out. And the craziest thing I could possibly come up with was, well, I think the most insane thing, the most irrational maybe thing, would be to take this community thing IRL, which hadn't caught on yet. AI hadn't really hit the market yet either. Not how it is now, and nowhere near. And yeah, my conclusion was the craziest fucking thing I could do was take it IRL and do something insane, like a 7-continent world tour. I had no idea how I was going to do it, by the way. I didn't know that it was going to cost over $250,000 and how I was even going to put that together, and juggling communities, offers, travel, hosting an event. Like, it was a lot. And I think it changed me a bit as a person. Like, I'm quite the extrovert. But even that was just, it was exhausting. I don't think I've ever reached that level of, you might say, burnout before in my life. And I think I still feel some of the leftovers from that. But that led me to where I am now, where we've got so many people that we know around the world. We can just show up and then boom, a bunch of schoolers show up. Because, you know, there's 27 million users on the platform right now. And I mean, they're all over the world. What a luxury to be able to have such a large community that you can just roll in and be a part of. And I earned that seat at the table to roll in, and people go, oh shit, it's Goose, by doing that, by being like, what's the craziest thing we could do? And it was the world tour. And then after that, I was like, what would be even crazier? Well, probably to do a giant road trip. So that's what I was like, okay, this is ridiculous and irrational and probably something I'd really like to do when I was a kid. So I'm going to do that. And so here we are. I'm like, I'm not doing anything fancy with this edit, but I've got just use your imagination here for this part. I've got a giant 40-foot bus parked in my father's driveway in Los Angeles. And it's just every day I'm trying to, within the appropriate hours, because it's this fancy-ass neighborhood, not be too noisy, make sure it doesn't look like absolute hell. Sometimes I struggle with that one. And like, it wasn't until a week or two ago that the paint was finally on and done. And now the windows are in as of today. Well, half the windows. And it's starting to feel real. And I almost feel like what helps me go through those difficult points where you're just doing this thing over and over without seeing any clear result, and yet you persist, is, I don't know, maybe I have the luxury of being stubborn as all hell. But I think also a big part of it is because when it doesn't make sense, at least for me, but it feels right, that makes sense to me. And a lot of times I'll usually lean into my intuition on big decisions like that. like, oh, what do I do next? And I'll just kind of like sit with it. I'm not going to be urgent, and then, lightning strikes when I'm in the shower at some point. Well, not literal, I'd be dead, but the idea that there'd be you're just sitting and doing something else, and all of a sudden this idea pops into your head, like being able to give this space for creativity. There was this really interesting talk given by John Cleese, who was part of the Monty Python crew. And I was never necessarily a huge fan of him. He was kind of like an older generation of comedy, but I was aware of him. And a friend of mine showed me this video, and it was beautiful. It was about creativity. He was talking about creativity, which is a very elusive thing that standard education and the military complex, all kinds of like structured organizations were trying to determine how to define it, what its limitations were, how could you grow it, like what was it? And it was so ethereal, so abstract, that eventually funding and effort for it just faded away in the 80s and 90s because they couldn't get any further. Creativity, right? Such a simple concept, and yet so elusive. And what he says in this speech, which you should watch this because I'm paraphrasing, he does it much more eloquently, and it's funnier. The guy's a fucking comedian. But I'll try and do it a little bit of justice here. Basically, one of the things that he highlights is that creativity isn't really connected to IQ or standard intelligence. It's the ability to turn on and off a switch, one where you are serious and one where you're at play. And your ability to willingly go into this state of play depends on your ability to take things less seriously and explore, let your mind explore without consequence to see what might pop up, which is something that I don't think we do a whole lot. Like as a people, it's there's not a whole lot of spaces that I'm aware of that you can just kind of tap into and will be like, hey, let's just be more creative, or like, let's find out more about you, right? It's usually you're following a path and responsibilities are being handed to you, not the space to be able to define yourself for yourself. And so it's interesting when you imagine what it is like to cultivate creativity, to give yourself a space where there are no consequences and you can explore. And I've noticed that when I give myself that space, which is quite often, like I think my intuition is strongest when I'm able to sort of cultivate this air of play, of letting thoughts just roll around, and then of course tossing them back and forth with someone else, which is like, putting jet fuel on that thing, right? Which is like a yes and strategy. Oh, that sounds cool. What about this too? That has been a very large reason why my irrational decisions usually come up, because these weird, odd thoughts that I'll have, whether it's I've had a major loss and I need to pivot my life, or things are going well and I'm going to sacrifice my earnings to make this interesting thing come alive, or even now, like to put together this bus, it's one of those big headlong tail things, which means you're investing a ton all up front at once before you ever see some kind of result. It's like laborious and painful. I have so many bruises and cuts, and parts of my body are now different shapes from just like the constant beating that it's been taking. And yet, I don't think I could be happier because that's where I want to go. I want those irrational things to show up. I want the me that I am now and in the future making my child self proud. Fuck yeah, you made your car all these other colors. Amazing. Way to, flex your freedom for yourself, or just like, yeah, like demonstrate to yourself free will, right? Remind yourself of your roots mentally as a person that was once a kid. I think I derailed myself with my enthusiasm a little bit there at the end. But the point was, there's the bus idea is like my favorite one currently. It's what's kickstarted all of this, which is the craziest ideas, the ones that are the most irrational. All of those have shaped my life in the best ways. The ways that most people that you would deem sensible would probably disagree with. And certainly my family has never been like, yeah, we're so excited that you're going and doing the thing. So I guess I'm saying all of this to first give you permission, right? You're going to have to go against the current in order to make something unusual or exceptional happen, right? By definition, it's part of the exception, which means you'll have to take a different set of choices. So I guess I'll leave you with this final part, which is I have this little theory about how you can judge if you're thinking independently. And what I will do is if I'm in an environment that matches my decisions, the clothes I wear, the way I speak, then probably, maybe, I'm a product of that environment. But if it's different than my environment, then there's a good chance that I'm letting my creativity flow and myself kind of shine through the resistance from the outside. Those are the things that sort of help spur on the most ridiculous decisions that I've made and the things that make me keep going and stay passionate about it in spite of all the time spent sitting, struggling, working alone, knowing that I have greater reasons than just what I have in front of me, right? The aloneness, the challenge. There are greater reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I hope that this helps you find and make more irrational decisions with your life. All right. Have fun, make friends. See you guys.